Now, though, it seems like we've set the stage for a third fight. Turki Al-Ashik, who, of course, was ringside and paid for this bout and organized it, was walking around with 3 fingers, put it up to Beterbiev. Interesting post-fight interview where Beterbiev said, I didn't want the rematch. So now that I lost, I might as well take this third fight. But do I want it necessarily? He didn't sound like he did. I mean, he is 40 years old at the end of his career. But Bivol said he's into it, but he really put out there, he said, look, I need time off. He said that the turnaround, 123 days, now 24 rounds against Beterbiev when no one had gone the distance with Beterbiev before that. That's a lot of wear and tear. He said he was doing anti-inflammatories every day in training camp, and there was a lot of injury and illness, which I'm sure both fighters are definitely going through. So will we see this next? Should we see this next? How much time off do you think they need? And let's also address this. 24 hours before the card, they went from a 20,000-seat arena, Kingdom Arena, to this makeshift, I think they're calling it Riyadh Citizen Arena or something like that. It's got 6,000. It wasn't an Apex warehouse, but it was not the space to house the greatest fight card of all time or this incredible rematch. There's already some big moneymaker in Russia who's trying to bring that fight because these are two Bivol born on Kyrgyzstan soil, but two Russian fighters. Where should the third fight be? When should it be? And should it be next, in your opinion?
I think the third fight, I mean, obviously I would love it in the United States, but it doesn't really need to be there. I would say, if they wanted to put it in Russia, that would be great. But if you're trying to maximize timing for it to be watched, you could put it in the Middle East again, or somewhere in continental Europe. I think continental Europe would be really an interesting opportunity.
But, I mean, maybe this is a better question for topic 2, but like, can they get away, meaning Saudi Arabia, putting out fight cards this big with that atmosphere that did feel dead? It did?
I've seen people being like, I thought the atmosphere was great. Guys, if you thought that atmosphere was great, you've only been watching fights for 5 minutes. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, those fights have been in the Apex.
Yeah, I'm not here to say that crowd was the worst I've ever seen, far from it, but it was modest and kind of quiet at best. It was not good. You want to put it in place where people can travel, where there's going to be ruckus. Dude, I mean, honestly, with the amount of Russians in New York City, dude, there'd be more Russians in New York City than there would be in Saudi Arabia. Let me just say that very, very clearly. And they wouldn't even have to travel, all the ones that are here over in, in Sheepshead Bay and all that kind of stuff. So, when they should do it, though, is a different question. I honestly think that should be third or probably even fourth quarter of this year. But to be honest, I don't even want to see that one. I mean, yes, if they made a third one.
Well, I was going to ask if we have fatigue here. We saw 2 great fights back to back. They looked a lot alike.
You have a new guy in this weight class. Again, after the Vosdick fight, I wasn't exactly sure, but after the Morrell fight, I'm very sure. David Benavidez, all roads lead. Well, I mean, obviously, Bivol's the champ, but as a next fight, to me, all roads lead to David Benavidez.
All right, I have scenarios to pitch to you based off of that, okay? Right. Number 1, if they go forward, which it seems like Turkey's plan with a third fight with Beterbiev and Bivol, at some point later this year, I would not hate to see David Benavidez stay at light heavyweight and fight Callum Smith, who had a big win on this undercard, and we can talk about that. How about this scenario that I threw out and people have loved and hated? I want to hear what Luke has to say. Bivol Canelo 2 next, and Benavidez Beterbiev next, but only under the understanding and the contract signing that the winners would face off and the losers would face off. People say, hey, you don't want to reward Canelo for ducking, but Canelo wants this fight more than anything, the rematch with Bivol, and now you got all 4 titles at stake.
I dare. Look at me as closely as you can. I dare someone to try and make the case Canelo can win 3 rounds.
I'm not saying he will win it. I'm saying is that
washed. What are we talking about here? He didn't get washed in the first fight, but he lost convincingly. Bivol has only gotten better. Canelo, to the best of my ability to assess, has somewhat degraded. He'll get fucking rinsed.
Okay, quickly, I want to talk about that first Canelo-Bivol fight, because we do say pretty regularly that he got handled. The reality is he lost 7-5 on 3 scorecards, but we don't believe that was the real score. He got a Canelo discount because of his name. The reality is what? He probably lost 8-4? Could he go 9-3?
I thought he won 4 rounds at most.
But I think what we're missing, and a lot of the internet is missing when rehashing it, is it was actually competitive. Canelo made Bivol miss like nobody else has. And I know eventually that rope-a-dope style caught up with Canelo, and he took a beating in the second half, but I don't think it was a one-sided beatdown, even though I don't agree with the 7-5 scorecards. It was a competitive fight.
I don't think it's a beatdown.
And Canelo had the injury.
But I'm going to say it one more time. Somebody make the case that Canelo's chances will improve with a second fight.
Okay.
That seems to me completely ludicrous.
I didn't enter this studio today to be a Canelo protector because he's ducking the shit out of David Benavidez. Tell your friends, okay? But that was during the stretch where Canelo looked human and he had the left hand and wrist injury and he wasn't able to train at full speed. So I do wonder if it could be different. You don't like the second half of that equation I pitched you?
No.
Because you know Canelo doesn't want to go straight into Benavidez or
sorry.
Beterbiev.
Sorry, you meant the
So,
Benavidez.
Benavidez versus Beterbiev.
I would take that fight. My interest in Canelo Bivol 2 is 0.
Okay, that's
It's
fair.
negative $8 billion.
That's fair, Luke.
That's what it is.
What do we say about these two, this rivalry? I see historians who I respect a lot more than me, like Cliff Rolled on Twitter, say that these two are approaching Michael Spinks for the greatest resume in light heavyweight history in boxing. Wow. That, you know, the winner of the trilogy could make some type of statement that they're in that category. This was never going to be a major commercial rivalry. These two don't, they're not household names in the United States under any degree. But the greatness, and for Beterbiev, especially late in age right now, that they're showing, they're all-timers. They're living legends in the flesh. These two are two of the greatest fighters I've ever seen with my eyes in active competition. I think that's fair to say.
I think that's fair to say, and I also think it's fair to say that there are some fights that remain for them in these weight classes, in particular, as you mentioned, Benavidez, or a third fight with each other. Canelo.
What about cruiserweight? Bivol's talking about cruiserweight this week.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because to me, obviously with Beterbiev at 40, I think we have to have some. Again, he still looks pretty viable, but he's 40. It's just hard to say how much longer he's got. Sometime, obviously, but not a ton. Whereas Bivol has, if he wants, it seems to me a significant amount of time. And I do think, if he fights Benavidez, and I'm just going to invent a scenario. If he rinses Benavidez, which I don't think that would happen that way, but let's just say, wins 8 rounds to 4, whatever. I think he should move up. We put so much pressure on these little guys to go from 30 to 35 to 40 to 47. And this is very, very difficult to do. And then when we get to the heavier ones, we're like, well, these guys can just camp out. And please don't misunderstand me. Even if they just camp out in this weight class, they're still turning into the point that you raised, historically good resumes. But I think it's a little bit, we're gonna ask the little guys to do some jumping. We should ask the big guys to maybe do some jumping as well. I think especially for Dmitry Bivol, that's something he should be.
I think his speed would be a problem for the major cruiserweights. Jai Opetaia seems to be the highest class cruiserweight, and that'd be a great fight, and that'd probably be the one they would angle toward building should Bivol move up. But he's going to be able to outbox these guys, I would think.
I don't think any of those those cruiserweights are. Dude, who at I keep saying light heavyweight. Who at cruiserweight is as skilled
Nobody.
as Dmitry Bivol?
Nobody.
And there's some good fighters up there. There is nobody who is doing anything like that. So the only question is, how much does the size impact? How much does the power punching impact? What does all of that do? But that, to me, raises the intrigue, not minimizes it.
Is there any chance, whether it be injury or change of opinion or anything, that we're getting Bivol Benavidez next? And don't forget, they have the sparring history with Benavidez claiming without bragging that I handled him.
So it certainly depends what kind of fight we get next based on whether or not PBC wants to play ball.
That's it. Because you and I talked off camera about that Turkey live interview on the DAZN broadcast.
Tell folks what happened?
With Ali Oladipo, which I think was a very, very awkward interview, which was, overplaying the greatest card play up, but maybe they had to, I don't know. But I think the biggest takeaway we have to have is Turkey looking into the camera and saying, I want to make Beterbiev versus Benavidez. This was before Bivol won, so he was saying it, meaning if Bivol won, it would be a trilogy, but if Beterbiev won, it would be 2-0, so he'd move out from that rivalry. And he looked at the camera and said, Heyman, let's go, let's make the fight. So, there's not a long history, Luke, of people challenging the great Al Heyman in that regard. Do you feel like this will make the PBC more or less likely to do business? I think that's the right question right now, because I wonder if you loop in the fact that there was a PBC fighter on this card, Carlos Adames, and we'll get into the circumstances of that fight, but a lot of people think he got kind of robbed on the scorecards. I wonder if that all plays into the future. PBC is the only major promoter that's not all the way in, it would seem, right?
Definitely.
Like Rolly will be on a ring card coming up. We've seen a couple guys jump over, but I don't know if this means this is the beginning or the ending based on that type of comment publicly.
I'd be speaking totally out of turn here. I have no idea what PBC would do, but I have a feeling that, PBC letting guys like Carlos Adames moonlight or Rolly Romero doesn't seem like a big ask of them. But one of your most important headliners in David Benavidez, surely PBC would want to control that. And I don't know if Turkey wants to play ball in that way. It seems like two different kinds of entities that, as it relates to someone like David Benavidez, they all want to have it their way. I
And with
I
Canelo
don't know who
moving
gives.
out of the States for 3 of his next 4 fights, right? He's supposed to be fighting Crawford this September in Vegas, possibly Allegiant Stadium. I wonder if David Benavidez in PBC looks at that as you're the new American Canelo. You're the next successor in taking the 2 big dates in Vegas, right? I mean,
Well, someone has to cater to the Mexican fans, and if Canelo is going to punt, I mean, someone's going to run that one back.
I wonder if we see and I'm just speculating as a boxing fan, but if we saw PBC still run that May 3rd date in Vegas, maybe with Benavidez and Pitbull on that card, that'd be interesting.
That to me would signal a lot.
That would be interesting. But what a performance from Bivol. What a fight. But let's transition now.
By the way, we didn't say it. Beterbiev performed well too.
Oh, hell yeah.
Obviously, he didn't perform as well relative to the first fight. And even then, I think even if you thought he won the first fight, this was not that.
Yes.
But, dude, I mean, Bivol had to fucking work. He had to work. There's so many times, watch how many times you just see stuff bouncing off of the gloves. I mean, and then to be right on top of him and then catching all that stuff. If you listen, I've barely trained, but if you've trained even a little bit, you know how insanely difficult it is to move into an opponent. And they're, by the way, an accurate puncher, and you have to catch everything and then throw.
Dude, he's a brilliant. Beterbiev is a brilliant boxer for a guy whose reputation was I knock out everybody that gets in the ring with me. I mean, it's just crazy. He's had an injury-plagued career. He didn't get into the pros until late after a big amateur career, but he's maximized the time. He's a great fighter. He did have his first loss. Are you okay with him when Bivol tried to extend the handshake in the middle of the ring after the fight and Beterbiev said, no, let's wait till after the 3rd fight?
Yeah, I don't care about that stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's fair.